Alright guys, I'm here with an MG guide today. I'm pretty well known for playing this role and terrorizing pub games with it. Have over 35,000 kills on the MG42 alone, and then if you combine all the other MGs in the game across all the different servers, I'm probably somewhere in the 40,000-45,000 range as far as kills go. I'm going to try to condense my MG knowledge into a guide, just some tangible tips for you guys to kind of understand my mindset while I play it, and also to hopefully just help you increase your kill count when you try to play the role. So, table of contents for the guide. The first part is just going to be about MG basics, just generally how to play the role and things you need to know going into it. The second part is going to be macro positioning, meaning where we position ourselves on the map to be most effective and how to think about where to position. The third part is going to be about micro positioning, which is mostly about how to use the mount system to be effective to set yourself up to get a lot of kills without putting yourself in danger. This guide is going to be focused on how to play MG in public matches, like the rest of my sort of educational videos, but a lot of the stuff I'm talking about will apply to playing MG in competitive games as well. It will apply to all of the MGs, though they're not all equal. The MG42, which I'm holding right here, I would say this is not necessarily by far, but it's definitely the best one. It doesn't have any of the downsides that some of the other MGs have. Good sight picture, good fire rate, good ammo count. On Axis, you also have the MG34, which there's really no reason to use it over the MG42. It's sort of all around just worse. On Allies, you have the Browning, which I would say is about as good as the MG42. It's definitely the second best MG. The reason I would put the MG42 slightly over the Browning is because I believe the MG42 fires faster. Now, I'm not actually 100% sure if that is true. I'm not going to go look up all the MG stats, but that's what it feels like to me. Like if I'm firing at long range and I need to hit 2 to 3 shots to get a kill in a very short period of time, it just feels like it's easier to do that with the MG42 than the Browning sometimes. But the Browning is also very good. And then on the other factions, on the Soviets, you have the DP. The DP is okay. It actually has a better ability to hipfire than the other MGs for some reason. It's more accurate. The problem with the DP is it has a low ammo count. You have to reload too often with it. It also has a slower fire rate, it feels like, and it's just generally a little bit harder to use. And then for the British, you have the Lewis gun and the Bren gun. Both of them have similar downsides. Not great sight picture at the beginning. I don't know if this has been patched yet, but they had they weren't really firing straight for a while, but that might be patched by now. But again, similar downsides fire rate, sight picture, ammo count. Now, all of the MGs still have the same sort of properties of an MG that makes them powerful, but MG42 and Browning are definitely a little bit better than the rest of them. Okay, so starting with MG basics. The first thing I want to talk about is just why MGs are so powerful, and I would even say a little bit overpowered, and that's going to inform how we want to play the role. MGs in hellletloose are similar to MGs in other war games, high rate of fire, high ammo count. In a game like hellletloose, where it only takes 1 or 2 shots to kill usually, that's already in and of itself pretty powerful. But the main reason the MG is so powerful, there's really 2 reasons. One is its accuracy. So once you're set up and mounted, there's very little recoil or bullet drop on the gun. So let's take a look at that. This is the recoil pattern if I'm not adjusting my mouse for recoil, meaning I'm not pulling down on my mouse while I'm firing. You can see that there's a little bit, but even just with a slight adjustment for recoil, so just as I'm firing, and I'm playing on PC, if you were playing on console, it would just be pulling your stick down a little bit on the controller. For me, I'm just pulling my mouse down while I'm firing. It's very slightly, and you can have very, very accurate gun. And the second reason the MG is so powerful is because it's still accurate even at long range. So in hellletloose, infantry will render up to 500 meters away, and you can't kill anything with small arm fire past that 500-meter limit. Your bullets will just kind of fizzle out if you try to fire past 500 meters. You can fire explosives like rockets and tank rounds past that distance to get kills, but with your small arms guns, you will not be able to fire past that. So the MG is very effective up to that 500-meter limit, as effective and in some ways even more effective than a sniper rifle, which is the only thing that is close to the same sort of effective range. For example, if we look out here in the distance, you can barely see them, but there's some people out there. Let's see how far is this. This is about 400 meters. There's a dummy out there. Just with a tiny bit of adjustment for bullet drop, it's easily hit it right. Again, and if he was moving, I would have to lead my shot a little bit, but it's really still very easy to hit things at this range. And again, in a game where time to kill is so low, you only have to hit 1 or 2, maybe 3 shots. You essentially have, with the MG, an automatic sniper rifle. And we'll talk more about why it's so easy to see people and, again, like how to sort of shoot at these long-range targets, but that's what makes it so powerful. It's just, once you're set up, you have this very, very strong kind of automatic sniper rifle that can hit things up to 500 meters away. So with that in mind, that's really how we want to be playing the gun. We want to be playing it as if it is a sniper rifle. It has the same strengths and weaknesses as like a bolt action sniper rifle would have. Like when we're far away and set up, we're going to have the advantage over SMGs and the other rifles. And then when we're pushing and trying to move and in close range, we have a little bit of a disadvantage. But there's still ways to be very effective at close range as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I think it's important to point out at the beginning here, because this is a common sort of misconception with the MG. You do not want to be playing for suppression with the MG. Again, think of it like a sniper rifle. If you were using like a scoped FG42 or whatever, you're not trying to fire over people's heads to scare them or make it harder for them to shoot back. You're getting a target and you're shooting. Again, you're very accurate. So don't play for suppression. If I'm playing MG, I'm only shooting when I have a target. This is one of the common mistakes I see with more beginner MG players, is they'll get set up and they just like want to get shots downrange. They just start kind of spraying off into the distance, and then inevitably they don't really get any kills, and then someone shoots back. Even though, like I said, you're very powerful when you're set up, you're also very vulnerable. So giving away your position, shooting off into the distance makes it very easy for good players or even just decent players to kind of locate you and take you out. There are some niche situations, like let's just say, for example, I had a teammate pushing into this building. I know there's enemies in here. I might send some rounds through the windows just to help him as he's going in. But generally, unless there's like a very specific situation where the suppression might be helpful, I'm not firing for suppression. I'm only firing when I have a target. Also, when you're firing, you want to be firing in these short bursts like I was doing a second ago. You don't want to spray, even if you have a lot of targets. Again, think of the gun as this very precise weapon. It's not a gun meant to just like put bullets off into, the distance, or there are times like if there's like a lot of smoke or something, you might just want to kind of spray out into the smoke maybe. But for the most part, you want to be firing in these very targeted short bursts that look kind of like this. When you're firing at targets that are very far away or targets that are moving, again, you don't really have to do too much adjustment for bullet drop unless it's like 400 to 500 meters. You'll have to do a little bit, maybe 300 meters. You do have to adjust for like leading. Like if I had a target running across the open right here, I do need to put the shots out in front of him a little bit. And you still want to do this kind of short burst paintbrush stroke sort of shot. So let's just imagine this guy was moving. I would be firing something like this. Kind of left to right out in front of him. Oops, I got a headshot. That can happen sometimes too. But yeah, I just want to fire out in front of him in these little short bursts, and then I stop. I'm not going to continue spraying. I'm going to see, is my shot behind him, is my shot in front of him, and then make little adjustments as I'm firing. Another important thing for MG is to use your FOV slider. So this is currently what I'm at 90 FOV right now. And let's just take a look. When I'm playing MG, I always want to be at 60 FOV. So first thing in the settings when you open it is just a slider. You just drag it to 60. And the purpose of this is it basically zooms my screen in, right? I can see into the distance a little bit easier. This long range targets stick out a little bit more. They're a little bit larger on the screen. There's a couple of things you can do with the FOV slider. My preference is to keep it at 60 all the time. There's an option now where you can put your regular FOV, whatever it is, for me it would be 90, and then have it so that your FOV when you ADS is 60. So that would look something like this is 90. When I look in, I'm zoomed in at 60. This is useful. The reason I don't like this is because I use my free look a lot when I'm playing MG. So if I'm set up, I'm using my free look to look around. And if I have it this way, it won't zoom in my free look. Whereas if I put this to 60, I'm still zoomed in when I'm looking around, and this is my preference. You can experiment with it. It's really somewhat a matter of personal preference. Moving around will seem weird at first, and things like jumping will seem off, like your depth perception really changes. Hip firing is a little bit more difficult maybe. I'm just very used to it at this point. I'm always on 60 FOV when I'm playing MG, except maybe there's like a close range situation where I'll switch back to 90. But you can experiment and see what works best for you. There are also some monitors will have a setting where you can zoom in part of the screen. I've never used anything like that. I don't think it's actually very useful. Like, I don't think you really want to be zoomed in any more than this. It does affect like how it feels to fire and your accuracy, and it will feel weird being too zoomed in. And you do want to have like a range of vision to see. Some people will consider like using the monitor setting like cheating. I don't necessarily consider it cheating, but I also don't think it's useful. If your monitor has that, you could experiment, but my preference is the 60 FOV zoomed in. That is way zoomed in enough for me. In addition to FOV, another important thing is just your video settings in general. So for MG, I'll show you my video settings. They're linked in the description of all my videos as well. These are just like copy pasted from another settings video. I don't do anything special with my settings. I think Gas recently did a settings video. That's probably a good one to look at, but any good player is using a similar settings. For our purposes with MG, really the most important ones are the view distance and foliage quality. So with my settings, right, we can look at, this is a wheat field. Yeah, if we just go zoom in, we can see more of it render. And then if we change the settings, again, we're going to change view distance to epic, and we're going to change foliage quality to high. Suddenly, way more of the wheat field is rendering from far away. People have different feelings about this kind of stuff as far as like, is it good to utilize your settings? I personally feel like, it's fine if you don't want to have settings like this, but you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. So again, to each their own, but I'm going to use the settings that are the best for being effective in the game. View distance, foliage quality are probably the important ones, but no matter what you do with your settings in this game, stuff is not going to render from far away. Wheat fields, even sometimes solid walls won't render from far away in this game. That's one reason that MGs get accused of cheating a lot, is because you'll be getting shot at behind a wall, and you'll say like, oh, they're tracking me through a wall. And that's just because the MG player is like 400 meters away, and the wall he's shooting at is not rendering for him. So just know that no matter what you do, that's going to happen. But you definitely want to have your view distance and foliage quality low to help you in some of these intermediate situations, like 200-300 meters out, so that stuff just doesn't render from as close. One thing I've got asked a lot is, how do I see people? And unfortunately, I don't think there's really any kind of secret to this. One, I've played the game for so long that I'm just able to sort of tell what a enemy helmet, what an enemy uniform looks like against the backdrop of the game probably better than the average player. Two, I would say the thing that has helped me to see people more than anything else I've ever done in this game was probably just upgrading my monitor. A while ago, I got just like a 1440 monitor, upgrading from like 1080, and that was like the biggest jump in being able to see things on my screen easily compared to anything else I've ever tried to do with like video settings or graphics and that kind of stuff. As far as in-game things, like I was just talking about, 60 FOV and graphic settings, those are definitely important. When I'm set up, I'm really just scanning and looking for movement. Being stationary and looking for any sign of movement is the easiest way just to see things in general in this game. But that's really what I'm doing. I'm set up, I'm zoomed in, I'm scanning, like I shoot and then I scan, just constantly on the lookout for anything that looks like a kind of an enemy uniform moving. And oftentimes when you're playing MG, because you're so far away, you're shooting at very, very small targets. So it's like kind of being up in the sky looking down on ants. Like I'm looking at these small little kind of ants moving across my screen, and yeah, my face is probably close to my screen at times when I'm doing that. But just any little sign of movement, anything that's not a teammate and moving, I'm shooting at that. And sometimes you might see in some of my videos, I'll think I see something and then I shoot it and it's actually just like a piece of wood or something. It's not perfect, but I would say the major things are just having a decent monitor, using the correct video settings, using 60 FOV to kind of be zoomed in, and then just be stationary, always looking for any sign of movement. Another thing I think is important to point out is that when you're set up, it is very important to prioritize targets that are dangerous to you. So in this example, this is going to be a little artificial, but let's just say I have a bunch of targets off to my right? But I also know that there's a guy in this building. I have to wait and kill this guy before I can start shooting the targets that I actually want to be shooting at. Always be prioritizing people that can kill you. Once you get that kill, you can then start deciding, to shoot out in the distance. But one of the biggest differences between getting a lot of kills or a decent amount of kills is if you keep yourself alive. There are a lot of kind of like mini one-on-one fights you get into where if you get the kill, you stay alive, you get like 10 more kills before you die. If you die, you reset and lose a lot of time. So always prioritize targets that are a threat to you before targets that maybe are easier to hit but are not a threat. When you have to fight in close range, always use your hipfire. There are very few situations where I want to use the pistol. The hipfire is very strong, even at a range maybe you wouldn't even expect. It will go, there's a little bit of RNG, like the bullets will spread out from the center of your screen, but you want to just place your crosshair. I'm not using any kind of crosshair program or anything, I just mean the center of my screen. Just place your target in the center of the screen, and then you do have to adjust for recoil a little bit, and this is on 60 FOV, so this is what I'm used to. But it's very accurate, even farther away. So I can hit people. Can hit people pretty easily. There are a few situations where you'd want to use the pistol. One is if you have a stationary target that you need to headshot. You really want to be going for headshots with the pistol. It takes like 2 to 3 shots even in close range to kill, and it's very slow. The reason I would pull out the pistol, for example, is if let's say there's like this guy's an MG player and I'm trying to push across this field. Maybe I'm far enough away where I'm not confident my hipfire is going to hit. Then I pull out the pistol, just get the headshot, and then push. The only other situation would be maybe if I'm in a building or something and I need to be like really quickly pushing and moving. The hipfire is very slow if you try to move, right? So if I'm like running through a building, I might pull out the pistol just so I can maneuver quicker and and try to just get in here and get some close range kills. Maybe I'm expecting people to not know that I'm coming or something. But even in close range, like in a building, a lot of time I'm going to be using the hipfire. So to summarize some of the important points. Only fire when you have a target. Use short burst, even if you have a lot of targets, like don't spray. Have proper video settings and use 60 FOV. Lean on your hipfire in close range. And always prioritize targets that are a threat to you first. So for the next part of the video, I'm here on Omaha Beach to talk about macro positioning and micro positioning. So when I say macro positioning, I really just mean what am I thinking about when I'm positioning? How do I know where to go on the map? And there's no getting around it. A big part of that is just knowing the maps very well, like having a lot of map knowledge from playing the game a lot. And part of that is to know where powerful MG positions are, but that's not the only part of it. I would say even more important than that is knowing the maps in order to understand where the enemies are, and based on where the enemies are, where am I going to be the most effective at setting up. So for this part, I'm going to talk about just how I think about that, and I'm also going to show some building models to just know how to utilize that repeat throughout many of the maps on the game. I'm not going to go over every single map and every single good MG position. That would just take way too long. I do have a series of videos called hellletloose Map Mastery. I'll link those videos in the description. A lot of the spots I talk about in those videos are MG positions. So if you want map-specific spots, go ahead and check those out. But I'll be just kind of giving more of an example of what makes an MG spot good and like just knowing what to kind of be on the lookout for. So there's really two things we're looking for when it comes to an MG spot. We want long sight lines and we want elevation. Elevation really just helps us with our long sight lines generally and just makes it much easier to see people. This is true not just for the MG but in general. Like a lot of times good players will utilize verticality a lot. They'll get up on top of things and it just gives you better lines of sight. And it's for MG like a safer position to get set up far away to just have a long sight line. So on Omaha, I'm here at the spot that I call Flat Top. At least that's what I've heard it called. I'm over here on the map. I'll show you guys how to get on top of it, but we can see from where I am that I have pretty long sight lines here, right? Like I can look down this way, I can look down this way, but just with a little bit of elevation, and this is how we get up here. I'm going to crouch jump on this roof. With a little bit more elevation, I suddenly can see like everything, right? I have such a long view from here. And you can imagine if there were enemies that were pushing through here, I would be able to see all of them. So that's what I'm looking for really with an MG spot is I just want to get elevated and I want to have this long line of sight. Now, you're not always going to be able to get to these kind of powerful spots. Sometimes you got to make do with what your team is giving you. It's really dependent upon your spawns, like if you have good outposts and garrisons to go to. There are situations where you just have to like lay in a road and get some kills that way. But what I prefer when I'm playing MG is these big elevated spots that give me a big line of sight across the map. So if we were to imagine that, let's say that this is my defensive point and this is the enemy attacking point, right? One of the important things about knowing the maps is understanding sort of the psychology of where people are going to go. Generally how that works in this game is there's going to be a garrison. There's going to be a garrison, let's say here, and a garrison down in here, right? Enemies are going to spawn on that garrison and they're just going to sort of be a line of ants going towards the enemy point. There are like nuances to that, right? But this is generally what happens. There's these like lanes of enemies pushing out from the garrisons towards the enemy point. Some people might stay back and defend, but usually, again, the most of players they want to fight, they want to push. They're pushing from those garrisons into the point. So we can imagine that there's this like stream of enemies, right? When I'm positioning as the MG player, I don't want to be in the stream of enemies. I don't want to have them like shooting into me. It's just not as safe. Like my preference for that kind of a point layout would be to be either here on flat top shooting into the line of enemies this way, right? Or similarly, I might be over here on the map edge on this building, which you can also get on top of, shooting into the enemies this way, right? If they're flowing into the point from here. If the stream of enemies is this way, I'm out on the sides. This gives me more range. We want to utilize as much of that 500-meter range as possible when we're playing MG. That's how we get the advantage. And it's also just safer. Like, the enemies are not going to be as likely to be looking in this direction, shooting at me. Now, I could set up, you know, like in this building, for example, looking out onto the road, right? But again, I'm closer this way, and they're easily going to see me firing this way. It's not as safe, it's not as effective. I could also go to something like the church and get up on top of here and shoot. But again, I'm going to be in a lot more danger. And we'll talk about micro positioning and how to set up and keep yourself safe. But again, there are exceptions to this, but my preference when I'm playing MG is to be on the sort of this diagonal, like off angle, shooting into whatever I'm trying to fight. We generally want to be getting set up to like look at these kind of high traffic areas. On each map there are different lanes. Sometimes people will be flanking. Like if people were flanking behind the point, for example, I'd still want to be up here far away, like shooting into them. If they were running through here, right, I'd want to set up this way, shooting into them. Sometimes you also want to be set up just looking into a defensive point maybe, or at a garrison. Like it's always nice when we can just farm a garrison, right? As the MG player, just get up, set up looking at a garrison. But I would say the most common thing is, again, there's going to be these streams of enemies, and I want to be set up far away, shooting into the stream, but not in the stream. So here's the first building model I want to show. I don't really have a name for it. I call it like the small broken sometimes. Hellletloose uses the same like building assets across a lot of different maps, and it's important just to be aware of them as an MG player because they're ways of just getting a little bit of elevation a lot of the time, and you'll find them scattered across the map. So just be on the lookout for them. And this is the first one. You can just run to the top of it. You can get set up like this now. Any like roof like this, you can get set up kind of perpendicular to it. You can also get prone on the side, get good angles, right? You can see how like even that little elevation, I can see so much, right? So there's just some different ways to get set up to experiment with. You can use the bottom part if you need to. You won't get a lot of like wiggle room here, but you can get set up, use the bottom. This is the first building I would say that I use a lot across a lot of different maps. Second building, I've heard this one called like MG House, MG Building. It's kind of like a classic spot, like middle of PHL on the main road. There's a building like this. You can find this on Omaha, on Carrollton, Utah. You can obviously use like all of the windows to get mounted and shoot out in different directions. But you want to know how to get to the very top. So one, you can jump in here. A lot of people don't use this spot, but it's quite good depending on the angle. And you can also jump to the very top of the chimney. You just jump across. You can jump onto the top here and get all the way to the top. Now this spot used to be more powerful than it is now. The mounting changes have kind of made it a little worse, but you can still get up to the top of the chimney and get a pretty good range of motion. You can set up and just change your angle to get different angles. You used to be able to set up like this, again, just like perpendicular and be able to shoot everything. So that's how you get on the chimney. Still very usable for sure. And now I'm here on SMDM to show a couple more buildings. This is another just like kind of broken building found on some different maps. It's here, it's on Foy. Pretty simple one, just know that you can get on the roof. Again, different ways to get set up. Get to the very top, get set up this way. And this is another building that's important to know, just another broken building similar to the last one. Again, use these a lot on Foy, but also here. You can obviously use the second platform to shoot out, but you can get on the roof, just jump up here, jump up here. I crouch jump, you don't need to crouch jump, I don't think. You can fall through this part of it. Like if you just walk across, you'll fall through. So once you're up here, you got to jump across that part to get to the top. jump right across. And once you're set up here, again, you can use the roof in different ways. So yeah, that's building models, guys. There are some other ones, like the Soviet maps have the yellow building, kind of chimney building that's quite good. Check out my map mastery videos for more map-specific spots. But these are the kind of buildings to be on the lookout for, just things that you can jump on top of to get a little bit more elevation and longer sightlines. So for the last part of the video, we're back on flat top to talk about micro positioning. This is really just about the mount system, how to mount effectively in this game. A little history lesson with the mount system. It was changed a while ago. I don't remember exactly when that was, maybe a year or two, pretty long time. But it changed the way that the system works. It's a little more consistent now. I would say it was overall a good change, but to summarize it, basically what happened was that they made it so that your character model when you're mounting. So this matters both when you're prone and when you're standing or crouched, but your character model cannot collide with things when you're trying to sort of swivel around. This was not the case before. They also made it so that when you're prone mounting, you have to be like on top of something. It used to be essentially that I would be able to mount like this with the back part of my body just kind of floating in the air and still get my full range of motion, right? But now I'm forced to mount this way, and I'm not going to have that full range of motion because my body, when I turn, will be off of the sort of solid ground, right? Again, similar for the crouch mount, like when I turn, I can turn up until my body hits something. So what this meant for MG players was that prone mounting was sort of nerfed. Like there were more good spots that you could prone on before, and crouching and standing mounting was buffed and more consistent. So I would say the most important thing to be thinking about when you are getting set up is the balance between your field of view, or sort of your visibility, that the place that you can see, versus your safety. And there's always kind of this back and forth relationship where the more you can see basically means the more an enemy is going to be able to see you. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be hiding all the time, but you definitely have to be thinking about when am I safe, and how can I mount to be the most effective. Like getting shot in the head while you're playing MG is going to be kind of the bane of your existence, right? So you definitely want to avoid that. Let's look at an example here on flat top. So here on flat top, again, we have these long sight lines, right? Now, if I wanted to mount in a way to have the most possible field of view, I would mount something like this. I'll get set up, just standing up. I can see everything mounting this way, right? The problem with mounting this way is that, one, I'm silhouetted against the horizon. So when I say silhouetted, I just mean my character model is sort of sticking up above the horizon for any enemies that might be looking in my direction. Like we just take a look. If an enemy was, walking around down here and they look towards that chimney, they're going to see my head beacon up, right? Very easily, silhouetted across the clouds back there. The other problem with mounting this way is that there's so much visual information on my screen, it's going to take me a long time to process it, right? Like just imagine an enemy could be poking his head up kind of everywhere in front of me, right? And it takes me a while to look through. Is there a guy there? Is there a guy there? You'll see that when I play MG, oftentimes I'm taking some shots and then I'm scanning. Mounting this way gives me the most information, but it also takes me a long time to process it, and anyone looking this way is going to be able to shoot me a lot quicker than I'm going to be able to see them, at least a lot of the time. Alternatively, if we wanted to focus more on safety, I might mount something like this, right? Where I'm getting prone, I have cover on my right, I'm getting set up, I still have a good field of view, right? But now I can target this area in front of me, I can try to keep this area clear, and anybody that's just out kind of pushing towards me or out this way is not going to be able to see me. Also, when I'm mounting, I can kind of swing around like this, and I'll show another example of this with windows in a second. But as I swivel around, I can kind of open up my field of view, and if I'm getting shot at from that direction, I can turn back around, keeping my character model kind of out of harm's way, right? If I was playing regular infantry from up here, I would want to peek kind of like this. So I'd want to like incrementally open my view. Again, it gives me like small information I can process quickly, more small information can process quickly, and kind of open it up that way. And it'll just put you again into this place where you're much more safe compared to just getting set up like this. Now there are still situations where I would, mount that way. Like if I wanted to shoot out this way, enemies running through here, I want to be crouching, right? But I would have to make sure that there's no enemies close by that are going to kill me. So one thing that will happen sometimes in the game is I'll set up earlier in a more cautious spot, and then as that area gets cleared or I feel more confident that I'm safe, I might go to the more risky spot. Like if I had a team like pushing through here, I might set up at first like this, just kind of helping them to control this area, and then when they control the area, I can now safely get to my much more high field of view, like crouch mounted spot now that they've controlled this area and I'm safer. So that's what you have to be thinking about constantly as the MG player, is just, am I safe or not? Another important thing is if I'm ever set up and if I get shot at right now, I have to make the split-second decision. Can I fight this person or do I need to get to cover? Now, if I ever get hit, I'm almost automatically going to be getting off of cover and getting out of the way. Unless, like, I see the guy, like say someone peeks here and he shoots me in the chest, I might shoot him back if I instantly see him, right? Or I already know where he is. But if I'm just like shooting off this way and then I get hit, I gotta automatically get to cover most of the time. A lot of times, because you're so far away, one rifle shot to the chest isn't going to kill you. So you'll have this situation arise a lot where if you get shot, you get hit, you know that the second shot is coming and you gotta get to cover quickly. Now, if I get shot at, let's say I'm set up this way and get shot at and the shot misses, usually, the first shot misses, the second shot misses, the third or fourth, by then the enemy's kind of like ranged in a little bit there. They're going to hit you. But you have this little small window of time where, okay, I get shot at, I got to swing around and look where I'm getting shot. And again, this is just like map knowledge and game sense. If I can locate the guy shooting at me, I'll fight back and shoot him. Otherwise, I got to get to cover if I can't find him fast enough. And this is one of those things that this is going to separate, again, getting a lot of kills from a decent amount of kills, is if you can win these little one-on-one fights and keep yourself alive. The more uptime you have, the more kills you're going to get, and you can get a lot of kills on this gun. But if you're constantly dying, then you're probably not mounting in a way where you're safe. Okay, you got to be going to a more cautious spot, clearing an area, and then taking more risk. You can't just set up. Like, good players will shoot you in the head. That's going to happen a lot when you play MG no matter what you do. But if you're dying a lot playing the gun, then you're probably not doing one of the things that I'm talking about enough. You're either like spraying and giving away your position, or you're not mounting in a way that is kind of leaning towards safety enough. Now for some other nuances of the mounting system, one thing to note is that if you're going to do a crouch or standing mount, if you can get set up in a way where there's nothing blocking your body, you can almost get this 360 degree view. So like this fence post is a good example where I can turn around, not quite 360, right? There's still like a little bit of space behind me I can't turn to, but look how much of a distance I can turn here. This was never possible before the mounting changes, but now again, if you can get set up like this and there's nothing blocking your body, you can turn as much as you want. And if you can get set up on one of these like poles, right, you can get all the way around. So like I can do a complete 360 like this. And this isn't necessarily safe, but it's just something to note that when you're mounting, like, again, you just gotta be thinking about your body, and if you can find spots like this, you can have like a 360 degree turret kind of range. Another thing that's important for mounting is just using windows in a way to kind of like peek basically. So if I'm playing a window, right, you can mount in a way where you can set up kind of looking at the window this way and get turn, right, and open up the field of view like you'd want to do with a rifle. If I had a rifle, I'd want to do that as well, right, like open up like this. So you can get set up on a window where my body is like completely covered right now and I can't really be hit. And then as I turn, I can like open up the field of view and see more and see more. And if I get shot at, I can turn back to cover, right? So a lot of different kind of windows will do that, and also situations sometimes where you just have like some kind of cover next to you. You can kind of do this sort of like I don't know what it's called exactly, but this kind of like swivel sort of peak to just keep yourself safe, and then you can just kind of do this like small peek, get some shots down, and get back to cover. Another thing important for mounting, and this really mostly at this point applies to prone mounting because of the way it works, but if you're covering an area, you want to start your mount with in kind of the center of the area that you want to cover, right? So imagine I'm trying to cover the street, right? I want to start my mount with my gun in the middle of this area, meaning I have left turn, right turn, I can cover the whole area. You wouldn't want to set up like this, for example, right, where I can't swing around and get all the way to the left, right? Almost to the left, but I can't quite get around. Yeah. Because you don't want to have a situation where some guy pops up and tries to kill you and you can't get to turn to him, right? So just something to note. I know that's kind of common sense, but it matters a lot in different situations when you're getting mounted, trying to cover an area. Just make sure that you have that left and right movement to cover the whole area that you need to. Also with the mount system, I know I had said that your body can't be like getting stuck against something when you're mounting, but there are some exceptions to that rule, particularly what I found on these slanted kind of surfaces, like this slanted roof. You can get set up this way and you can actually turn into the building. So this works on roofs, it works on like glider wings, things like that. You can get set up this way and you'll have more room to maneuver than you would expect to. Like obviously when I'm in here it's kind of hard to see, right? But I can turn and get my body into the kind of wall this way in ways that with a new system you wouldn't expect it to work. But for some reason on these slanted surfaces, sometimes it will. You can get set up like I would expect it to not let me turn like any more than this, right? But it all the way over here, it'll let me go. So just something to note. And that's really it for the mounting, guys. Just experiment with a lot of different ways of getting set up. There are different like rules and then rules that can get broken depending on like the surface and the situation. But always be thinking about, am I safe and am I setting up in a way where I can be effective, balanced out with not getting shot in the head. And that's it for the MG guide, guys. If you're liking this content, if you're liking my videos, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave any comments you have in the comment section. I know some of this was probably common sense for a lot of people, but MG isn't rocket science. It's just kind of using the mechanics of the game to use that range, use that accuracy, get up high, and you can get a ton of kills this way. So hope this helps you guys. I'll see you out there.